I'm just gonna come right out and say it. I think this, the Bushnell Launch Pro Circle B, which is a 5-year-old launch monitor, I think that this might be the best value launch monitor in the marketplace right now. And honestly, I'm not sure it's even that close. Now trust me, in 2026, I did not expect to be saying that, especially after this was discontinued last year and then brought back at the end of last year. But the more I have dug into it, the more I've tested it, the more I've used it, and the more I've seen some of the changes that they've made, I'm impressed. Like, this is probably the device I would personally go out and buy right now. And today I'm gonna tell you all about why that is. I'm going to give you 10 reasons why I think the Bushnell Launch Pro Circle B is arguably the best launch monitor for most people on the market right now. Now, as you know, there's no such thing as a perfect launch monitor that's a one-size-fit-all for everybody. So at the end of the video, I'm gonna talk about some things I don't like about this and why it might not be the best fit for you as well. But honestly, I've been impressed, and let's talk about why. Okay, first, you gotta understand a little bit of backstory, because if you are researching this product, you are going to find all sorts of different information because so many things have changed over the last 5 years when it came out. In 2021, Bushnell's parent company Vista Sports also acquired Foresight. Right after that, we saw the release of the Foresight GC3 and the Bushnell Launch Pro. And we're gonna talk about the differences between those in just a second. But ever since that happened, there's been this kind of like competition between Foresight or Bushnell, because the reality is the hardware is the exact same. The only thing that is different for the most part is how it is priced. So there's been a little bit of a battle between Foresight and Bushnell for how do you position these and how do you price these and what do the subscriptions need to be. And all of this finally culminated about a year ago when Bushnell discontinued the Launch Pro. What they did was they created the LPI, which was essentially a stripped down version of this that they then charged way too much money for. So you had this wonderful device at a great price point that they then killed to, in my mind, essentially protect the Foresight brand. Well, that did not go over well. The Bushnell LPI dropped in price by over $1,000 within months because nobody was buying it. And then less than a year later from discontinuing it, Bushnell said, okay, you know what? You win, we're bringing back the Launch Pro as the Circle B edition. And that brings us to today and some of the slight changes they have made since they brought this back. And those slight changes actually make a really big deal. So just be aware of this when you're researching the Launch Pro. If you are finding a review from a few years ago, it's not necessarily going to be apples to apples with this. Even though the hardware is the same, they've changed pricing, features. That's been one of the most confusing things about this device, is that it seems like every 6 months or so, something fundamental to the marketing of this device has changed, which has left a lot of people to say, I'm gonna move on, there's plenty of other options out there. But as it sits right now, that would be a mistake to overlook this, and today, that's what we're gonna talk about. So now that you understand a little bit about that history lesson, let's jump into the reasons that I think this thing is so good right now. Oh, real quick, one more thing. In this video, I'm going to do my best to help you understand exactly what this is, how it compares to everything in the market, and to give you all the things you need to know in order to figure out if this is right for you. But just understand, I'm one guy, I absolutely could have missed something, so make sure you do your own research. But if you do decide this is right for you, Bushnell, to my surprise, just offered my audience a 10% discount code. So that code will be listed below if you use that, or if you click any of the links below. As you might expect, if you use the code, if you click the links below, I will get an affiliate commission for that. If that bothers you, totally understand. Go do all of your own research. My whole goal here is to help you find the right products for your needs. I don't care whether or not you buy this or any other launch monitor out there. I'm just trying to give you the information you need to make the right decision for you. So keep that in mind. But if you did find this helpful and you do decide this is the right product for you, then save yourself some money, use the code. That helps me out and allows me to continue making videos like this for you. With that, okay, no more stalling. Here's all my reasons why this thing is so good right now, even 5 years after this technology came out. Okay, number one, and this is probably the biggest reason, is this is the exact same as the Foresight GC3, which costs $6,999. This retails $2,499. Massive difference, $4,500 difference for the exact same product. And to put this in perspective even more, for the average golfer, the difference between the GC3 or the Launch Pro and the $20,000 GC Quad Max, well, those differences are relatively limited. The GC Quad Max does have an extra camera, which is really going to help, especially with weird shots. You know, if you hit stingers, if you're hitting mishits, if you have big slices, it's going to do a better job of calculating those shots accurately. It's got a touch screen, which is better and more configurable than the one you're going to find on the Launch Pro. It also has impact detection, so you're gonna be able to see exactly where on the club face you hit your ball. And it also has some extra metrics when it comes to club data. Now, are all of those things, is that worth an extra $17,500 over this for the average person? Absolutely not. Like 98% of the time, this or a GC3, it's gonna provide pretty much the same user experience that you are going to get from the Quad Max. And in some ways, it's smaller, it's lighter, it's easier to set up. So there are definitely some like real quality of life benefits that come from going with this over the much more expensive model. So all this to say, despite the fact this is fundamentally a 5-year-old device, this is 5-year-old tech, it is still as good as anything that I have tested. And I personally consider this the most accurate launch monitor I own. I'm using this. I also have a GC3. When I'm not set up in a TrackMan studio and I need a reference device to compare other products, this is what I'm using. So 5-year-old technology or not, it is still one of the most accurate launch monitors out there. Okay, number 2, since we're talking about price, this feels like the right time to mention, the subscription is now actually fairly reasonable. So this is one of my 2 biggest critiques with the old Launch Pro. We'll talk about the other one in a second. But basically, the reason they charge so much less for this than a GC3 is because a GC3 is fully unlocked. You get both ball data and club path data. You get lifetime access to all Foresight software. So the Foresight app, FSX Play, FSX Pro, FSX 2020. You do not pay a subscription. You get everything right out of the box. It costs you $7,000. With this, you pay $2,499 up front, but then there is a subscription associated with it. So previously, there was only one subscription that was available, and that was a $499 gold package. So if in the past, if you wanted angle of attack, if you wanted club path or any of that other club data, you would have to have that $500 a year subscription. And it did not matter if you didn't want to use any of the simulator capabilities that this can provide. If you just wanted to go out to the range and practice and have that club path data, you would still have to spend $500 a year. Along with that, if you wanted to use the Foresight iPad app, you would also still have to pay $499 a year. Now, most launch monitors these days, for basic iPad app access, just to go to the virtual practice range, that's typically included. So I have to spend $499 to get FSX Pro, which honestly is too advanced, is not my favorite app. It is definitely more for like coaches and club fitters than the average golfer. To have to spend $499 just to get that, like, that felt egregious. And that was kind of a deal breaker when it came to the old Launch Pro. So why am I telling you all this? Well, because while they still have a $499 gold subscription, they now have a new $199 silver subscription. And this feels like the sweet spot for most people. For $199 a year, you're getting all of that club path data, you're getting the ability to use 5 courses on FSX Play, and you are also getting the ability to use FSX Pro, the old iPad app. So now, if all you want to do is practice and get all your numbers and maybe dabble in a little bit of simulator use, you can do that for only $199 a year. So do the math. This is $2,500. A GC3 is $7,000. How many years will you have to pay that $200 subscription to get up to the cost of a GC3? A whole lot, like a decade plus. What, 3 decades? Like 20? A long time. So for the average person, getting to unlock almost all of the capabilities for this for $199 a year and $2,500 up front, that is insane for a professional level launch monitor that's like 98% as good as the $20,000 GC Quad. I could go no further, and that alone would make this worthwhile. But the good news is there's a lot more. So a little bit later on, we're also going to talk about that gold subscription and a couple of the things that come with that. But in the meantime, we're going to jump to number 3, which is the second big issue I had with this. So the first was that $500 subscription and not having a cheaper way to just do basic things with this product. The second is that the iPad app, and I just mentioned this, FSX Pro, I think is not great for the average person. It's confusing, it's overwhelming, you can get a lot of data, but it's just not a great user experience to use on a day-to-day basis. Well, I just found out like a month ago that there is an all-new Foresight app that came out in the middle of 2025. I did not know that this happened. I did not know this existed. And so I've got to say, I was stoked when I went in and started using this app, and it's awesome. It's everything that I wanted this product to have with the old app that was like honestly one of my biggest complaints. If you go back and watch my reviews of the Launch Pro from 2022, 2023, all the updates, my biggest critique was that iPad app. Well, with the new Foresight app, everything is so much better for the average golfer. So first off, the user interface is just so clean and easy to use. Everything is super fast, it's super snappy, and this thing connects really quickly once you have done that initial connection. With this, we now finally have a visual representation on the range, so if you want to see your shot tracer, you can get that. You did not used to be able to get that unless you were paying a $500 a year subscription. So now you can go out to the range on your iPad, you can see exactly what your ball is doing. If you were just in the tile mode where you can see all your metrics, you can customize what metrics you see. You can also very easily with most of these metrics set ranges. So if you were dialing in your 7-iron and you're trying to hit your 7-iron exactly 170 yards, you can set it so that between 165 and 175 yards, it shows up green. It's a good shot. If you are outside that range, it will show up red. The Foresight app makes this very easy to do, and honestly, that is one of my favorite features to use in a practice app for a launch monitor. Within the app, there's also a drill library. Right now, they have a ladder drill and they have a target practice drill. So with the ladder drill, you can try and consecutively hit different distances all in a row. With target practice, it'll mix up an array of different yardages and you try and hit that exact yardage. And honestly, these features work really well. They're really responsive. And like I said, pairing the unit to your iPad or your phone is super seamless and works well also. So overall, honestly, just having this app makes this such a better user experience for the average person. Whether you're setting it up in your garage, whether you're taking it out into the range, this app is so much more useful, and I am 95% sure it is available with a silver subscription, and you do not need the gold subscription in order to get this. But I do think you have to have at least one of these subscriptions in order for it to work. Okay, so the fourth reason I'm really liking this right now is their new link-enabled technology. So this is essentially where you can go through a bag mapping process and you hit 3 to 5 shots with every single one of your clubs, you get all your exact yardages, and then either using the Bushnell app or a compatible rangefinder like the Pro X3, you can then get real-time yardage recommendations when you are out on the course based on your own yardages. Now, I'm gonna be honest, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I think this technology is a little gimmicky. I don't necessarily think that it's something most people need. If you're a halfway decent golfer, then chances are you have a pretty good idea of what your yardages are. You don't need a rangefinder to tell you that. But with that in mind, the fact the Foresight ecosystem is so robust makes the experience pretty good. So I will say, I've not personally tested this yet. So I was under the impression that you would need a Bushnell Pro X3 link in order to get club recommendations in your rangefinder. That's their newest version of their flagship rangefinder, which costs $599. I have both a Pro X3 and a Pro X3 Plus. But I just learned yesterday you can get a firmware update with either the Pro X3 or the Pro X3 Plus, and it will update it to be able to use link-enabled technology. So I just did that with the Pro X3 Plus, and the process was mostly pretty easy. Had a few hiccups here and there, but it took me about 10 minutes. We got it updated. But all of a sudden, I can pair it in the Bushnell app, and once I have mapped a bag, I can get those yardages. So that also goes back to one of the benefits of the new Foresight app, is that is where you're going to find the bag mapping program. So that's one of those features. I think I first saw it in the SkyTrack software. FlightScope now has it. So the fact we now have it with Foresight and it's very user-friendly is really welcome to see. So a couple things to note. I have not tested the link-enabled technology myself yet. I plan on doing that soon. But one of the things I think is pretty cool is that when you're playing around and you have the Bushnell app and you can see the GPS overview of the hole you're playing, it will then show you a scatter plot of all of your different clubs. So you can see exactly what your 7-iron, your 8-iron, your 9-iron did during that bag mapping program. So you can get a sense of, oh, this one might be a little bit farther, but the dispersion is a lot tighter on this other club. So being able to look at that data on the course, not only is it cool from a tech perspective, but I could see that being genuinely useful. Is it a must-have? Absolutely not. Is it a little gimmicky? Totally. But the fact you can do it and the fact this ecosystem works so well and the fact they updated some of their older products to be able to use it, I think is really cool. Also, one thing I want to note, just because I've heard it from a few different people, like I said, I have not tested the link-enabled technology myself, but I've talked to a few other people that have, and they have said that, honestly, it's got some issues. They've run into some bugs with it. They've not had a great experience. So I can't personally comment on that because I've not tested it yet. I'm planning to shoot another video once I have used it. And like I said, this is kind of like a little bonus for me. It's not something that I plan to personally use a lot, but it is worth noting I have heard some of those complaints out there. And I just wanted to bring it up in terms of full disclosure, even though I haven't been able to test it myself yet. This also feels like a good time to point out one of the other differences between the GC3, the GC3S, and the Launch Pro. If you buy a GC3 or a GC3S, it will come with a Bushnell Pro X3 link. That is a $600 rangefinder. It is among the best golf rangefinders out there, and in the price, $7,000 for the GC3 or $3,799 with the GC3S, you will get one of those rangefinders. If you buy the Launch Pro, it does not come with that. And this also feels like a good time to make a comparison between this and the GC3S. I don't understand any reason why anyone would buy the GC3S right now. It is the exact same device as the Launch Pro. Yes, it comes with that $600 rangefinder, which could be useful, but with the GC3S, as I understand it, there is no silver option available for the subscription. The only option is that $499 gold subscription, but you still need the subscription in order to use all the software and to get that ClubPath data. So to sum this up, the GC3 is $1,300 more expensive. You do get a free $600 rangefinder with it, but the only option for a subscription is $500 versus the $200 you can get with the Launch Pro. Oh, but you do get your first year free with the GC3S. So $500 value, you get that free. With the Launch Pro, you get a 14-day trial of the gold membership, but then no additional membership after that. So yeah, there might be a couple benefits to the GC3S, but overall, for most people, like this makes way more sense. And then you compare it with the GC3, $7,000 up front, plus you get the rangefinder, everything is unlocked. If you hate subscriptions and just want to pay it all up front and not think about it, I understand that, but it will take 9 years of gold subscription membership with the Launch Pro to get to the $7,000 of the GC3. Occasionally, you do see sales on some of those devices, so that might change up pricing a little bit. And like I said, Foresight, Bushnell, they tend to make changes to pricing and features and all of these things far too often, which makes it difficult to cover things like this. But as it sits right now, this, in my mind, is just a way better value than those other two devices. Also, I realize, it's not all that often I get really excited about a product. I'm just talking about all this stuff. I really want to stay unbiased. I really don't think there's a one-size-fits-all product for most people. I think everyone has a very unique use case when it comes to a launch monitor. But the more I've used this and the farther I've gone down it and seen all the updates they've made, the more I'm like, this is almost as close to a no-brainer as you're going to find in this space. And again, we're going to talk about some of the downsides. I'm going to make some comparisons to some of the other products out there because there are still a few other ones that I think are really good picks and might be better for you than this one. But by and large, they've fixed the biggest issues that I've got with this and have improved a bunch of other things as well. So let's keep going with this list. Okay, this video has gotten so much longer than I expected it to be, so let's run through some of these next ones a little bit quicker. So number 5 is the fact that it has a built-in screen. And that is just such a good quality of life feature because it allows you to take it out, stick it on the range, and if you don't want to pair it with the app, if you don't want to do anything else, you can just look down and you can get all of your numbers very quickly and very easily. There are plenty of other launch monitors that don't have screens that I love, but if you give me the option between having a screen versus not having one, it's a no-brainer to take it for the added convenience and flexibility. I will say this particular screen is not the best. This is still 5-year-old technology. I do prefer the e-ink screen of the Unicore iMini, but that's $2,000 more expensive. I do like the configurable OLED screen on the Full Swing kit, but that's double the price, and that is a radar launch monitor, which is kind of a different story than this. So while the screen certainly works well, it's relatively responsive, it's not necessarily my favorite to use, but this is a relatively minor critique. I just love the fact it has one at all. Number 6 is that it is just as good indoors as it is outdoors. So what you'll find is that typically most devices, they're either going to be quite a bit better indoors or quite a bit better outdoors. There's not all that many that do a really good job of both unless you're starting to get into the higher end. So for instance, the FlightScope Mevo Gen 2. That is my other favorite launch monitor, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in comparisons to that in a second. But if you're going to use that indoors, you're going to need 16 feet of space, 8 feet behind the ball, 8 feet in front of the ball, and generally Doppler units aren't quite as accurate indoors as optical units. Like this has cameras instead of a radar unit. Another example going the opposite way is the Square launch monitor. This is one of those launch monitors that people that use it absolutely love it, but even though it's affordable and very good for what it is indoors only. Just recently, Square announced the new Square Omni launch monitor, which I think is going to be like $1,700, that now has a built-in screen, and you're going to be able to use it outdoors. A lot of people are saying that is going to kill everything else, but honestly, I'm not so sure because the software on the Square honestly wasn't all that great. And when you look at how good and how robust the software ecosystem is for this, not to mention the fact it is a tried and true professional device for a little bit of extra money, and yes, that subscription, so it's definitely in a different price tier of what the Omni is going to be, I think that this is still going to win out for most people. But we'll see. I have not used that device yet. I'm really excited to check it out, and I hope it blows me away and proves me wrong, and that we have even more competition. Because the people that win most when all of these companies start competing with each other is you, the golfer. You're getting new products with better features at lower prices when everybody's competing with each other. So it's just kind of a wild time to be around the launch monitor market. All right, point number 7, setup is as easy as it gets. You literally turn it on, you wait 30 seconds, you stick it next to you on the range, boom, all of a sudden you are getting accurate results. A lot of Doppler units, they're a little bit more finicky. They take a little bit more time to set up properly because you got to make sure all the angle is right and everything is angled just perfectly. This, there is a calibration mode, but you generally don't need to use it. You set it down, you hit your shots, and it is going to give you accurate results with minimal calibration required. So yes, if you want to set it up with an app, then it's going to take a few extra seconds for it to connect to the app and use it. But overall, I've been really impressed with how just little time it takes to set this thing up and use it. And that is a very real benefit because the best launch monitor is the one you're actually going to use. And if something takes too long to set up and that's going to deter you from using it, especially if you're just planning to use it for like 10 or 15 minutes before you go out onto the course, having a device that is quick and easy to set up is super valuable. I also want to mention, when I first reviewed the Launch Pro like 4 years ago, I had all kinds of issues getting my subscription connected, connecting it to the app, connecting it to computers, getting everything to work properly. I had to get on the phone with Bushnell support. I'm really happy to report that that process has gotten so much better. Everything is more seamless now. I log into my Foresight account, I hook this up to Wi-Fi, boom, it immediately recognizes my gold membership. I pair both of these with the app. Next time I go to use it, turn them both on, boom, automatically pairs. Everything when it comes to like setting things up and pairing your device is just so much better than when this device came out 4 years ago. And so that's been a really nice surprise because that was also one of my major critiques with previous versions of the Launch Pro. All right, number 8. FSX Play is my favorite first-party sim software to use. So I just really like using FSX Play. So I have a moderately spec'd gaming PC, and overall I found it to run pretty well. Instead of putting it on ultra, I put it on high specs. Everything looks pretty good. I very rarely run into issues with lag, and overall it has performed really well for me. I've tested the newer game day software from Unicore, and it's fine. It's definitely a big step up from their old software, but I found it to be much more taxing on my computer, so I didn't have a very smooth experience when I was running it. You can definitely ramp up the graphics with FSX Play if you want to, but even when I do put it on ultra settings, it still runs pretty well on my moderately spec'd PC. I like that if you have the gold subscription, you still have access to FSX 2020. That was their older sim software that has a few cool features and various things, so you definitely have some options. But then you throw in the fact that the new Foresight app is one of my favorite app experiences out there. Then all of a sudden the software package that you get with the Launch Pro, I think is probably the most robust and the most reliable of anything out there. Number 9 is, we kind of touched on this, is just simply the fact it's professional. Professional build quality, professional accuracy. This is a professional tool. A lot of other devices kind of skew more consumer level or prosumer level. This is a legitimately professional tool. And I like that you can now make it as consumer friendly or as professional friendly as you want it to. So if you just want to be super easy and fun to use, go use the Foresight app. If you want to get into all of the nitty gritty and all of the crazy details of all of your clubs and everything, you can use the FSX Pro app. If you want to do all of these things within a sim environment, you use FSX Play. So I just love that this really feels like a professional unit that also can be dumbed down for the average consumer, even if you don't know what all these metrics mean, and even if you've never used a launch monitor before. And finally, the last reason why I'm still such a fan of this in 2026 is the fact that you have such a large company behind it. So to be clear, I have not been a fan of a lot of the things that Foresight, Bushnell, Vista Sports, whoever, I've not been a fan of a lot of what they've done over the last couple of years. You know, creating this, discontinuing this, rolling out all these different products, that's all been really obnoxious. And I hope that we're mostly done with that. That's still like a concern of mine, that they're gonna like change everything I just talked about sometime in the next few months, but I don't think that's gonna happen this time. What I do like is the fact that there is a ton of investment and a ton of smart people behind this brand. The fact we have seen their products get so much better. The fact that all of their products are built so well. The fact that the software and apps generally look good and work well. The fact they have all of this support and this ecosystem behind this product, I think says a lot about the confidence you can have in buying it. Some of the other less expensive units out there, you kind of wonder, like, what is this going to look like 2, 3, 5 years from now? Is it it still going to be supported? Are they going to make all the software improvements that they need to do to really get it up to like a top tier level? I have a lot of questions about some of those other products, but this is one of those where they've already done a lot of that work over the course of the last 5 years. A lot of things have been improved. It's as accurate as anything you're going to find, and it feels like a professional tool. So the fact that you've got this ecosystem behind it, despite some of the like marketing, decisions they've made, which I've not been a fan of, the fact you have this ecosystem, I think for the most part is going to bode well in the longevity of this device. And like I said, even though it's 5-year-old technology, I think it's still going to be very relevant and very good in another 5 years or even 10 years. So who knows what new advancements are going to come out. But the bottom line is this is still very good as it sits, and I think it's still going to be very good for a long time to come. This is the most like positive video I have done in a while, and I try not to do that too much because I'm a fan of so many different products, but I keep saying it, like this has really surprised me, blown me away over the last few months. It's really good, but it's not perfect. And depending on what you were looking for, it still may or may not be the right fit for you. So I want to talk about a few things that I've found that are not perfect about this, so that you go into it eyes wide open if you decide this is the one to get. Okay, downside number one, and this is going to be a big issue for a lot of you, is if you want to use GS Pro, I don't know that this is the best, or at least not the best value device you can get. Okay, so we talked about the gold package. We talked about what that gets you. It gets you more courses with FSX Play, gets you all the club path data. Well, the other thing that the gold package gets you over the silver is the ability to use this with third-party software. So if you want to use a piece of software like GS Pro, you will need to spend $499 a year to get the gold package for this. On top of that, you'll need to spend $250 a year to get the GS Pro license. So if you want to use the Launch Pro with GS Pro, it is going to cost you $750 a year. And that's a lot more money than a lot of other devices. There are some devices out there, for instance, the FlightScope Mevo Gen 2, you don't have to pay any subscription to use third-party software. You just pay $250 to GS Pro and you're good to go. So to pay an extra $500 a year over some of those products, if your whole goal is to be able to play GS Pro, well, that's gonna be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. If you also plan on using Foresight software, if you also plan on taking this out to the range and you want all the club path data and everything, then it may be a little bit more reasonable, but if you just want a sim to be able to use GS Pro with, there's probably some better options for you. One quick one, and this is going to be the case with any other optical launch monitor, is it's going to be more difficult for you if you were playing both with right and left-handed golfers. One of the nice things about having a Doppler unit is it sits behind you, so regardless of whether you're left or right-handed, it's still going to track the ball. But if you're switching off between right-handed golfers and left-handed golfers, then you're going to have to move where this is on the ground. So if it's a right-handed golfer, you put it over here. If it's a left-handed golfer, you're gonna have to move it over to the other side. So it's not gonna be that big of a deal for most of you, but if you have both righties and lefties in your family and you're using this on a regular basis, that will get a little bit annoying. Another downside is that there is no impact detection on this, and you will need club stickers if you want to get club path data. So there are not that many launch monitors that provide impact detection. That's where it will show you exactly where on the club face you were hitting the ball. The GC Quad Max at $20,000 will do that, but also the FlightScope Mevo Gen 2 for around $2,000 will do that. So if that's a metric that's important to you, the Mevo Gen 2 will actually give you more metrics for less money, which is one of the reasons why I think that is such a good value. There are definitely aspects where this is better than that, but when it comes to the most amount of metrics possible, there are some other devices that will have more than this for around the same or less money. Also worth noting that the Launch Pro and the GC3 are compatible with one club sticker. So you're gonna take one of the reflective stickers, you're gonna put it kind of right in the center on the top of your club, and that will help you track club path data. Once you get to the GC Quad, that's going to be compatible with 4 different stickers that you will put in an array around your club that is going to provide even more accurate data, but this will not register those. With this, it is a 1-dot system, which I'm sure is probably less accurate, but again, 98% of the time, it's not gonna matter and it's gonna be pretty dead on. So one other concern I have on this is potential battery issues. So I have a GC3 and an older Launch Pro, and both of those I've run into just some weird battery issues, especially if they sit for a while without using them. My Launch Pro, I've had a tough time getting to take a charge. It fully died, and then I plug it in, try and use it, and it's not coming back to life. With the GC3, I found it'll be fully charged, but then will like randomly shut off sometimes. Then you have to plug it back in, and then it'll be fine, but then it's not. And so I don't know if that's been fixed with the new Circle B. I imagine there's probably some sort of battery replacement process that goes on with this, but I'm not completely sure what that looks like. I will say I've now had this for about a month and I've run into none of those issues. Everything has been much more reliable from a battery standpoint, but once we get a few years down the line, I'm curious to see if we start having issues, because I have experienced issues with those devices in the past, and as I've mentioned many times, I believe it is the exact same hardware. So I'm not sure if they've made updates or changes behind the scenes to the battery of this device, but that's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on, and if I do run into any issues, I will make sure to shoot an update video. And the last point I want to mention is just some like general bugginess I've found with the whole ecosystem. I know earlier in the video I was talking about how easy and how seamless the setup is, how all the apps have been improved and they're so much better, and generally speaking that is all true. But I will say with so many different features, you've got, the FSX app, you have the Bushnell app, you have rangefinders, you have the device itself, you have it with a computer. I will say I have run into just some weird occasional issues when I'm like updating software or updating firmware or trying to do something and it doesn't do exactly what I expected it to do. It certainly is not as buggy as I found it to be in the past. And like I said, most of the time, everything is very smooth and seamless, but especially when I'm trying to connect a new device or update something, it does seem like I run into occasional issues that are just not quite as smooth as I would like them to be. But again, nothing major, but I have noticed compared to some other brands, things aren't always quite as seamless as I would like them to be. So there you go. That was a very long video about the Launch Pro. I know it wasn't quite the same as the typical review that I do. I might do one of those in the future, but I also recently have done a written review, and a lot of the stuff from like an accuracy standpoint, it's all the same as it was when I reviewed it a couple years ago. I just wanted to shoot this because it's not that often I get like just genuinely impressed by things. Especially, I don't get genuinely impressed by products that are 5 years old that I've had a number of issues with over the years. But at least from my perspective, Bushnell is doing everything right with the Launch Pro. I can't say the same for Foresight. I think that this is definitely going to eat into Foresight business, but if they look at this as like the flagship, the one they're really trying to sell, having those positioned as much more expensive models just makes the value on this like so much better and makes it feel like such a better buy. But honestly, I go back and forth between like my favorites between the FlightScope Mevo Gen 2 and this. I think both of those, they're pretty different units. They both have a lot of different pros and cons. But for all the reasons I mentioned in this video, I think this is going to be an excellent fit for a whole lot of people. So if you've been thinking about this or you've thought about this in the past and kind of wrote it off after it was discontinued, this is your chance to say, well, maybe it's worth another look, because frankly, I gave it another look and I have never been more excited about this device, which is saying a lot because when it came out 5 years ago, I was pretty damn excited. So there you go. That's a very glowing review. I think that this thing's really pretty great. So take all that for what it is. So with that, my name is Sean Ogle. I'm the founder of this thing here at Breaking 80. We talk about cool golf courses and cool golf products. Remember, you can use the coupon code that is listed below. It's gonna knock 10% off the cost of this, which is wild because I already think this is a great value at $2,500. I did this review as though that coupon code doesn't exist. And so if you can get it and knock it down to that price, it is an even better deal. Also worth mentioning, I guess one other like bonus thing that I didn't talk about earlier in the video is that if you are a first responder or in the military, you can get a 20% discount on this unit. Always really nice to see when brands do that. And I've heard from a bunch of my readers that they've taken advantage of it. So if you are a first responder or in the military, then that might make this even more compelling for you. If you're trying to figure out what to watch next, go take a look at this video right here. That's where I talk about my favorite outdoor launch monitors. And with that, I hope you have an excellent day and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.